Hello my friends, welcome to episode 28 of Just Return. Last episode Belinda was facing the terrible challenge of having to swim with the river in order to get to the help that she would find in the village there. She realised this was all she could do to help Gus, who was very ill. She changed into a pair of tight-fitting lightweight trousers and a skin-tight top. She felt that she should try and protect her skin from pests, parasites, although she didn't know this would be no protection with sharks. After checking that Gus was sleeping comfortably and seeing that he'd got water nearby, she scribbled a quick note, gone to the village for help. She could smile at that. A similar note in an isolated home on Salisbury Plain or in County Down would mean so little compared with what she had to do now. Belle followed the track to the river, and the forest chatter seemed to be cheering her. A flock of bright blue macaws flew from the treetops and across the river as she got there. How easy it was for them, she thought. She looked at the water and got into it, the spot where the villagers hauled their canoes ashore. She launched forth, taking strong strokes but using breaststroke as it tired her less. She paced herself. She wanted to get across the river as fast as possible and the length that she needed to, but it was a long swim, and she realised now that she hadn't thought about the current. In her studies she remembered the statistics. The Amazon is such a mighty train of water that its current carries fresh water out 125 miles into the Atlantic before mixing with the sea. It has also been calculated that it carried down the river 106 million cubic feet of sediment every day. Of course, Belle knew that where she was could be on one of the thousands of tributaries that all converged as the giants swept through South America, from the Andes to the east to the Atlantic in the west. As she swam steadily and 100 yards from the bank, she tried to think about comforting things. She had to believe that she could do this, and she was also swimming through her head for encouragement. Then she remembered an appropriate quote: "Even the upper end of the river believes in the ocean." Was it William Stafford, she asked? As she got around the bend and into the windy river, she repeated the quote. It might be a wrong way round kind of thought, but she was going upstream and the smaller river had opened to the wider one, but she just felt it helped her believe she could get there. She passed the caimans that had bothered her in the boat, to the amusement of the natives. She couldn't remember what they called them, but she was terrified. The caimans had already eaten, she hoped, and they slept as she sped by in the sun as a baby after its feeding. They were sleeping. Belle reached out across the river and had one of those wildlife experiences that would never be forgotten. Dolphins. The pink Amazon dolphin, 2 of them swimming beside her, slightly alarmed but relaxed as they swam either side of her. They seemed to be enjoying her company. The sound they made was like a piece of wood running down a long plastic comb with a chuckle at the end. It set Belle at ease, and there was nothing aggressive about these animals. She felt as if she had 2 guardians and swam all the stronger. If she died now, few had enjoyed such an experience of wildlife creatures coming near in this wonderful land. She wanted to touch them, but thought it might be the wrong thing to do, so she spoke instead, thanking them for seeing her over the river and telling them they must have been very well brought up. They left her as she neared the bank where some canoes were. She could see the village now. A brightly coloured heron of some kind flew out over the river downstream, disturbed by her approach. Breathless and tired, Belle came up the bank by the canoes, hoping she would be welcome coming unannounced like this. More exhausted than she realised in the water, Belle stumbled as she passed the canoes and struggled to get back on her feet. Some of the small children who were playing nearby saw her and ran to fetch Taliki, who hastens to Belle, now on her feet again. Taliki takes her arm and looks at her in disbelief. Taliki loved to swim. In fact, the first thing she did each day was to go with the other women and girls to the water and wash and swim. This was a community activity, and from a little girl, Taliki had been happy in the water just as little was already. The women bathed up to 4 times a day. However, Belle, to swim up the river from where the men went to hunt, something was quite unthinkable about it, and alone. Taliki could see she was distressed. She took her into the main lodge house, and soon a group of women and children had gathered. A couple of older men were there, along with the old medicine man. A drink was brought for Belle, and she gratefully gulped it down. The juice was so refreshing, and she had time as she drank it to work out how she would explain to the older man her problem. He called for her to be brought and gave her the traditional greeting as she stepped forward. "Gayat, Belle," and she bowed and said "Gayat" in return. He closed his eyes a little and creased his brow. Belle knew he wanted to ask questions. "Gush," she said. Then with her fingers did an imitation of a mosquito making a noise and landing on her arm. Then after a few minutes flying off. She said "Gus" again and pointed at herself. She counted on her fingers 10 and signalled with her hands, the sun rising and setting, east to west. Then she said "Gus" again and showed how he shook, how hurt he was, how he vomited. The old man looked grave. Belle looked into his kindly and ancient face. The brown eyes looked back. Belle hoped he understood her gestures and knew about mosquitoes and malaria. Maybe he wouldn't have a clue what she was talking about. However, the older man was giving thought to the matter with all the same attitude as her own doctor would in Salisbury. He was thinking of Gus's age, also his size, and the one worry was that he didn't come from the Amazon or the wild jungle lands. He'd never met a pale person before, but he'd heard tales from a tribe down the river. The disease had killed some loggers, nearly 20 of them, and some young. Rarely this disease killed Indians. They were from here, but outsiders. He sucked in air sharply as he searched his head. Well, he had to do something. He called Taliki and another woman. Taliki was to go somewhere. The other woman fetched jars and pots and brought them to the wise old man. Before she left, Taliki brought Likla and the toddler round to meet Belle and hugged her. Belle sure needed that hug. As the old man heated a mixture over the fire, stirring it gently and sprinkling some powder of bark he had ground down, the other women gathered round Belle, all with concerned faces. She realised that these were real neighbours. Her concern was their concern. Likla took Belle's hand and brought her outside. Yukta, Rukno, Kainol and 3 other men arrived bringing some leaves that looked like palm. They gave them to the women. Yukta and Rukno came to Belle. "Gayat, Belle," she responded. They looked concerned and entered the main village house where the old man was muttering over his brew. Belle, with Taliki, Likla and some other women, entered. Soon the old man took the pot from the heat and poured it into a pottery container. He gave Belle a small cup and seemed to be indicating that was how much Gus should have at a time. He signalled to Yukta to go. As they left the lodge house, Belle realised that some of the women were strengthening the palm leaves. She wondered what they were for. On a later visit she would learn that the women used the fibre of this common local palm to make twine, which allows them to weave hammocks, bags, fishing line, wrist ornaments and even articles of clothing. The men hurried Belle to the canoes, and soon she was hugging Taliki and Likla and going back down the river with Yukta, Rukno and 3 other men in haste in a canoe. The speed of the men was amazing, and Belle felt that this was the closest thing to an ambulance along this stretch of Amazonia. She noticed that the caimans were still sleeping as they passed them, but she noticed little else. She was in deep thought. What had been going on with Gus, this gentle man who had saved her life and preserved her? Did he just have hallucinations and nightmares? What were the things he shouted all about? Where did he come from? Belle felt that while she hoped with all her heart that the Indians could save Gus's life, there were some black clouds in her head that might not easily be driven away. Her relationship with Gus had been based on kindness, communication, sharing skills and working in unity. Now Belle was afraid. The evils from the past were reaching forward and placing the ugly where only beauty had been visible before. So my friends, hopefully the medicine can help Gustav. But these concerns of Belle, what do they mean? Following episodes will explain. Thank you for continuing with me. I really am enjoying sharing this story with you, and I just hope you're enjoying it too. Bye for now. Love from Kate and me. Bye now. Bye.